Welcome to BPM's IPO Readiness Roadmap, a series of conversations with our experts who have stellar experience with companies deciding to go public or determine if another option may make the most sense for them. I'm John Weems, Head of Business Development with BPM, a top 50 US accounting and advisory firm. And today we are focused on the not always sexy, but always essential topic of assurance, specifically audit and financial statement readiness. Today I'm joined by audit partner Michael VanderKlugt, co-leader of BPM's Life Sciences Group, with extensive experience in other industries, including consumer products. Michael has worked with numerous IPO track companies in his 3 decades with Deloitte prior to joining BPM. Michael, thank you for joining us today.
John, thanks for having me. Enjoy it.
Michael, I know you are aware of a thing or two about companies and the competitive landscape in business and life. I know you bring experience as a college football player, and I understand you've also climbed Yosemite's Half Dome 4 times. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about some of the parallels from those other endeavors and some of the work you do with IPO track companies?
To be successful in those activities, it takes preparation. So I think as companies head down the path of doing some form of life-changing transaction, IPO, SPAC, M&A transaction, it's all about the preparation, being prepared to be able to be successful in that. And also, as I kind of think back on climbing Half Dome, the last parts of that climb, we're using guide wires to go up the backside of the dome, and kind of the parallel there is in these transactions, as companies go through it, they will be looking for others in the process as their guide wires, and whether that's their investment bankers, their attorneys, their accounting advisors, that to be successful, you have to surround yourself with secure lines, guidelines, not to put a pun intended, but climbing the wire, climbing the backside of Half Dome, you let go, you fall. So I think having those guidelines there in that process is very important.
Let's talk a little in the pre-IPO stages. Let's talk audit readiness and consideration in the choices and routes a company may choose at that point.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, I mean, obviously the first question, as an entrepreneur or serial entrepreneur, sometimes first time, is to really understand what the strategic outcome is going to be. There are different paths and different paths of getting there. You could choose to stay private as a company through your life cycle. Other options are, you want to build the company and look for a strategic partner to go through some form of M&A transaction. Or the last, in many, are doing it right now, is going the public route through IPOs or through SPAC, which is kind of a new avenue, or not really a new avenue, but a new promising avenue for a lot of companies over the last few years. So, really that's kind of the initial decision that you need to make as a business owner of what path you're going to take. And that's going to involve discussions with your advisors, with your investors, and really understanding your business and where that can, draw traction in the marketplace.
Let's talk about IPO execution. So you've decided that this is the right route for you. I know there are a lot of moving parts. Maybe talk us through those variables and ways that you and the BPM audit and advisory teams would play with them.
So, I mean, obviously the first step in maybe going back to kind of the decision around which route, or whether it's, public or private, a lot of that will drive different aspects of finance and how you go through and envision that. If you are doing a public transaction, you will need 2 to 3 years of audited financial statements. So preparing for that, working with your auditor. So one, choosing an audit firm. BPM has a large public company practice. So we serve companies from public company audits and work through those IPO transactions as the audit firm. The other piece would be is to identify a strategic advisor. Many times as you go through this process, your finance organization is generally thinly staffed. I think companies grow, they maintain an organization that will get them through, but not necessarily at the extent that you would need to from a public company standpoint. So getting an advisor in to assist you preparing for the audits, preparing your financial statements, preparing for your ongoing regulatory filings and requirements and financial statement requirements. So As BPM, we also have a group that does work with companies on IPO/SPAC readiness work, to go through that process.
Michael, are you comfortable? I know there are situations where BPM would collaborate with a Big Four auditor, or they would be on the other side. You comment a little on our comfort level collaborating with other firms.
We do, and in many cases, I mean, over the last several months, we've worked on 2 or 3 different transactions where Big Four may be the auditor or somebody else is an auditor as we're going through. My benefit of having been at Deloitte for 29 years is I understand that audit process that the Big Four go through. From an audit standpoint, as we're the auditors, again, I know that process can help guide companies through that. But also working hand in hand with your audit firms or other service providers to understand that process, to work with them, to help companies anticipate what their audit firms or their advisors are going to need of them so that they can be prepared and not caught off guard once a request comes in, or they truly understand the process and going into it. So a lot of what I envision that we can do with companies, whether it's in the audit role or in an advisory role, is just to being an advisor to the company of the overall process and anticipate and plan that. Oftentimes we're asked, can we get this done in 3 months? And my general response is, I don't think the company can be prepared in 3 months to be a public entity. So really trying to lay out a timeline and a path to get there, over, is it 3 months? Is it 4? Is it 5? Or is it 6? It just depends on how well the planning is laid out and the process that you're following to get there.
So, I know a lot of times, people envision they founded a company, it reaches that point. Going public is not the finish line, fair to say. Talk a little bit about post IPO. What does life look and what role do you play there?
You gear up for this large transaction, but then there are ongoing financial reporting requirements and diligence activities that you need to make sure that you comply with. So, again, as your audit firm, we're well versed working with companies in SEC filings, getting through quarterly reviews, annual financial statement audits. On the other side, if we are working with a company as an advisor, we can work with your organization as you take that next step and be in a supporting role to you as a owner, as a public company, working through those different regulatory requirements, helping you draft your quarterly reviews, your quarterly financial statements, annual financial statements, and your ongoing technical accounting expertise that you will need. Again, as a growing company, oftentimes some of those positions are not full-time positions. So to, again, preserve and save capital and also make sure that you're having the right representation, companies do look for outsourced professional service firms to assist them in those roles.
Look, I know this is not just an intellectual exercise for you. You have been through several. Can you maybe give us an example of when it all came together, when all the the climbing partners were successful here?
6-7 years ago, working with a medical device company, they had been seeing some very successful growth and attraction in the marketplace. But it was at the time when the IPO market seemed to really be closing down, especially on medical device companies, but also overall in the life science industry. So, real big push to work with the company to get through. In this case, we were I worked as the audit partner on the audit side, but working through several years of back audits, working through the IPO process, technical accounting matters, and in that case, working with other service providers such as the attorneys, bankers, valuation firms, really, trying to streamline the process as much as we could to really look at when was that window going to shut, when did we need to be completed by, and how do we get the company over that finish line to really work through that. So setting out the game plan, working through all the different activities and keeping that going and making it a well coordinated event through all of the service providers, and in that case it was very successful. The company made it out, completed the IPO. From what I recall, they were the last medical device company that year that had a successful IPO, and that was in September because the window shut. So it was very critical for that organization to be out and in the marketplace at that time, or else, hard to say what would have come of them without being able to get through that transaction.
Can you comment maybe some industries where you're presently working with pre-IPO or even post-IPO companies?
We've recently worked with one organization that completed its IPO in the fall timeframe. So in that case, we were their advisors working through technical accounting matters. So, definitely seeing, growth and activity in the life science space. We've also recently been working with a couple of companies on the food tech side, looking at different strategic alternatives, whether it's an IPO or a SPAC. So really working with them again, much of that process is the same. When you're going down those avenues, it's really geared towards the financial statements and the readiness of the company. So, but working with them in a capacity of technical advisors from an accounting perspective, as well as getting financials together and working in an audit support capacity. So those are two industries that are really attracted right now in the marketplace, have had record investments from the venture capital community over the last 12 months. But really the IPO market in a lot of the industries and tech as well continues to be strong.
Well, Michael, thank you for sharing your experience and joining us today. I invite our listeners to connect with Michael on LinkedIn. I realize I'm biased, but I know him to be very generous with his time and willing to talk through options with you. I invite you to subscribe to BPM's YouTube channel, and we will be honored to have a complimentary preliminary IPO readiness conversation with you as you consider your options. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes, and we are always happy to answer your questions along the way. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, John.